Welcome to the first in a series of briefings from Cranfield School of Management, focusing on the themes of marketing and leadership in the run-up to the US election 2012. Joining me today in the studio are Dr. Paul Baines, reader in marketing and expert in political marketing, and Donna Ladkin, professor in leadership and ethics, who's conducted a number of studies in this area. Now Donna, we're seeing the results come through from Super Tuesday, where 10 states have been voting to choose their preferred Republican candidate. How do you think these candidates have performed so far?
Well, as expected, Mitt Romney comes out as a winner, not as decisively as he would have liked. He's won 6 out of the 10 states. I think what's particularly interesting about his campaign is although he has thrown loads of resource behind it, he hasn't actually, closed the deal, as it were. So I think that's quite interesting and sends up some warning signs to his campaign overall, because he's had a huge amount of resource and he hasn't actually clinched the deal, as it were.
Paul, do any of these candidates represent a serious challenge to President Obama?
Well, I think if you look at a recent poll from the Wall Street Journal, what we can see is that the array of Republican nominees are relatively less popular than Obama is. So, for example, against Obama's 50% of the vote, Romney would get about 44%, Santorum about 42%, and so on. However, this kind of lead is probably is to some degree within the margin of error of a typical poll. So at the moment, there's still all to play for. Another poll from Rasmussen suggested that Romney might even be a point in front of, which is well within the margin of error, ahead of Obama. So I think at the moment it's difficult to say that whether Obama would have a decisive victory in the presidential election, but it does look like at this stage that he would win an election.
And Donna, what do the results from Super Tuesday tell us about what the Republicans are looking for from their presidential candidate?
I think it's very interesting in the primary election, because basically in the primary election you have the diehard Republicans who are taking part in this process. So generally speaking, you see a constituency that wants a more extreme version of republicanism represented, somebody who would be quite keen on anti-government, sort of low government interference, would be against healthcare, those sorts of things. I think what's a real challenge for anybody who's going to come up against Obama is that not only do they have to win that Republican need for a more extreme version of that, they also have to appeal to the more general American public. So although the Republican Party may want somebody a bit more extreme, that extreme person may not actually be the candidate who could win the general election. And I think that's the balancing point that the Republicans are having to dance around at the moment. And perhaps that's part of the reason that Romney isn't actually enjoying the sort of support he would like, because he is seen as a more moderate candidate. So whereas he may actually do better in a general election, for the Republican Party, they may be looking for something a bit more extreme.
Now, Paul, each of these candidates has a large campaign team behind them. What role do they play?
Oh, the role is hugely important. A typical campaign operates a bit like a small business. It's a very entrepreneurial kind of setup. So the first thing that a politician would want is a general consultant, helping them on the strategy, working out what issues to talk about, how to talk about those issues. And the general consultant would be a very decisive and important member of the team. There'd then be a campaign manager who would run the day-to-day campaign. That campaign manager would have a team of other people around him or her, which would incorporate a fundraising consultant, a communications consultant, a pollster, a director of the volunteer team, of the team of people doing all the telephoning and so on, an online specialist these days, and of course an opposition researcher, the person that digs up the dirt on the opponents. So that campaign team is actually extremely important. Without the campaign team, of course, we wouldn't see as much of the candidates as we typically do. And how big the campaign team is depends on how much money's been raised. And we can see that someone like Romney, of course, with the support of his super PAC, has a sizable, considerable organisation behind him.
And will we see these candidates take up a different position from that of the primary to the presidential election?
Yes, as Donna says, there's a big difference between the two, because in for example, the Republican primaries, the people that are voting in the Republican primaries are Republicans, by and large. Whereas in the presidential election, the people that are voting are maybe registered for a party, the Republicans or the Democrats, or an independent. But equally, they may not yet have made up their mind and may not have registered with a particular party at all. So what we see there is an attempt by a candidate to win swing voters, and that requires a much more moderate position. So there is a very interesting positioning change from inside a primary, from targeting partisan voters to targeting more moderate voters in the general election. And it's quite interesting, because that change is never really picked up, and yet it could be. So if you're too extreme, if you start making really extreme statements, then that could come back and haunt you in the presidential election.
And Donna, what's your feeling about that?
No, well, I agree with what Paul has said. I think one of the real difficulties for anyone wanting to win office, high public office in the States, is that the United States is such a disparate group of people. So to actually represent the United States of America, to represent all the different constituencies in the country, is very, very difficult. And I think in terms of the kinds of messages that a candidate sends out, they have to be very careful, because a message that one constituency will actually love, another constituency will hate. And I think that we've actually seen that being played out through Barack Obama's presidency as it is, that he's tried to do certain things that other constituencies don't like. And I think that's a real challenge for anybody taking up political office in the United States.
And Paul, we've seen quite a lot of negative campaigning, so-called attack advertising in the primary race. Are we going to see that continue into the presidential election?
Very likely. Negative campaigning in the US is de rigueur. It's the stuff of American politics. We have it a bit in the UK, but it's nothing like the vitriolic campaigning, the toxic campaigning, as one of my colleagues calls it, that exists in the US. There are various reasons for this, actually. One reason is that is the freedom of speech doctrine that operates in the US, the idea that you can say anything, and that's fair game. Another thing is that America has much stronger freedom of information laws, so you can actually find details out, court records, whether someone's got divorced or not. You can find this stuff out. So opposition research is actually a fundamental element of US politics. But the interesting thing about negative campaigning is that if it's done properly, it can severely damage the vote of an opponent. It doesn't tend to swap somebody over from one party to another. So if you run a negative ad against your candidate, what you're trying to do is depress the vote for that particular candidate. It's unlikely that those voters will come to you, but what you might do is stop them from voting for that particular candidate. The problem, though, is if you don't do it right, if you, in other words, make a negative charge, which isn't true, then what you can do is damage your own image. So what most political parties in the US, candidates do in the US, is aim for third parties to undertake that negative campaigning on their behalf. So we see a lot of campaigning by third-party groups. The obvious example was the Swift Boat Veterans for Truth against Kerry in 2000, which severely damaged his chances of winning. I've no doubt we'll see much more of that in this particular upcoming presidential campaign.
And Donna, what are you going to be looking out for in the coming months?
There are two things. First, I'll be looking to see what kind of messages different candidates put out. It'll be interesting to see how Romney actually reacts to the sort of marginal win that he's had in Super Tuesday. So it'll be interesting to see what constituencies he tries to appeal to, and similarly how other candidates like Rick Santorum might respond. And the second thing that I'll be looking for is to see what President Obama does as the candidate who he's going to be taking on becomes clearer. So it'll be interesting to see what response he makes to it.
And what will you be looking for, Paul?
I think I'll be looking to see Obama step up in the sense of really illustrate his position, because he does have a negative image with voters at the moment. So we'll be looking to see him set out his stall, illustrate why US voters should select him, and also we'll be looking for a Republican candidate, which will probably be Romney, also step up and define why US voters should select him for presidency. So I think that's the key thing, to see them set out their stalls in a much more ambitious way than they have done at the moment.
Thank you both for your interesting insights. We'll pick this up again in August after the party convention.
Thank
Thank you.